invited to give this presentation, one of the first questions was, where was I going to base it, what sort of target, and so we'll find out if I'm aiming at the right level. If not, then say that's over my head, or can you just speed it up a bit and get to the meaty bits. So I'm Roger Brown, Senior Developer with Snapper. Joined Snapper around April last year. Been working as a contractor for Snapper for a couple of years previous to that. This is when I wished that I had a wireless mouse. Okay. So I'm going to start with a brief history of smart cards, what they are, how they work, and how to use them. So this isn't from the marketing point of view. This is from the well, you've been given a project, you've been told, right, you're going to use smart cards. Before you run and hide under your desk, start thinking about this talk, and right, this is what I've been told. This is how things flow together. This is now starting to make sense. I now know what the next steps are. What I'm not going to do is go through all the possible applications. I'm willing to talk about applications on a question and answer, but the field is so large that I can't. Otherwise, it'd just be like a shopping list. And also, I'm not going to tell you how to break them. Different systems have different vulnerabilities, and I'll leave it to your ingenuity to do the various research if you want to break them, or just ask the right people. The challenge from the people who implement the systems is how to make them so that they are secure. Now, when you think about a smart card, it's a little thing that you have in your hand. You want to make it as cheap as possible. You want as many people to have these. And then you've got back-end systems. These are the things you don't want to break. The back-end system, you're in control of, you can change it. But if you've got to change 1 million cards in people's hands, then you've got a big problem. And it has been done. Card swaps of smart card technology have been done, but they're a nightmare. Dead man's quote. So any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. This is where we separate ourselves from the salesman. The salesman wants to use the smoke and mirrors, but if you remember the ending of The Wizard of Oz, just before she puts on the shoes, behind the curtain there's the wizard. Somebody has to be making the cogs actually turn, and that's what I'm going to dive into. So, there's nothing new under the sun. Obviously there is, but things are a lot older than you think they are. So the first smart cards were thought of in 1968. Obviously the vision is quite different to what we have now, in that the first smart cards, they were IC based, but then would you have a small battery to keep them live, or would it be a non-volatile memory? How would they actually work? And the first patent only came about in 1982, and you notice that's just before they start getting used by the public in the real time. Now I take my hat off to the French. The French, apart from sinking a few ships and things, they do like to get to grips with technology. They did have a Minitel system where they got rid of the phone book before anybody else, where they stuck a little terminal next to people's phones, and that was a very cheap device. That meant they didn't have to reprint the phone books every year. They also the TGV, that knocked the pants off the British high-speed train. But here we've got the French phone cards using smart card technology. Now if you think about to that time in the UK, we had an appalling a telephone card where, as you used it, there was this big ka-thunk, 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 as a electromechanical arm went and erased a little bit of magnetic information. Whereas here we've got the French actually using smart cards. French debit cards, 1992. Here they've got the carte bleue, so obviously the blue one, but around there are also a lot of failed cards. I don't know whether anybody's heard of Mondex. Back in the UK, that was it came just after Switch, which is equivalent to BFPOS, came out, and people weren't ready for smart cards back then. And so there are many, many other examples of smart cards being brought out and used in real products. And if you've got a mobile phone, you have a smart card. The SIM is, to all intents and purposes, a smart card, and complies with exactly the same standards, and you can talk to it the same way you use other smart cards, if you want to pull your phone apart. So, we'll start with contact cards. Your SIM is a contact card. So, they work by contact. As they say, here's one I prepared earlier. That is how a smart card, a contact smart card is delivered. It's in a little push-out section. So that little thing is the same thing that would go into your phone if this was a phone SIM. And there, I've done a photograph of one of these cards, a tiny little picture of what the contacts look like. So that slides into a reader. Contacts actually touch the pads, deliver the power to the device. So if we're going to have lots and lots of these around the world, what we want to start doing is getting some standards out. So we can have common manufacturers, we can have common interfaces to these things. And that's what ISO 7816 is all about. That tells you, right, I've got one of these things, what can I actually do with it? You look at ISO 7816, that will tell you all the things. It will tell you the size of the card, where the contacts are, what the voltages are, what the protocols are to talk to the thing. As a developer, the sort of things that you need to know is that, as with all things, it's never simple. There's always improvements made from one generation to another. So we start off with the simplest cards, which worked on a simple serial protocol. Then they came up with a packet protocol. So you have to be aware of different types of smart cards. So you may have to have your code doing something slightly different depending on the generation of technology you're using. So the big two that leap out as a developer are the T equals 0 and the T equals 1. But other than that, the data that you send to the cards, they're pretty much standardized between the different types. The next fun one, and where Snapper really gets into the picture, is when we talk about contactless cards. If you remember the contact card, that's stuck into a reader, and I'll just show you one. That is a reader that, say, you'd find at a car park or a vending machine, where the card slides in, if the gate was open, the card slides in, and the contacts match up with little pins inside. So there, that's sliding in. And it does have a latch, so that it latches, as soon as you put the card in, the machine says, thank you very much, and it latches it down, so you can't pull it out until it's completed its transaction. But the device is providing the power, so that's all nice and easy. Contactless, we've got a huge problem. These things, we're not going to put a battery in them, because otherwise you'd have to, the life expectancy of the battery, what's it, 3 years, and you've got to continually recharge them. So they have got around it by using the reader itself to power the device. So when you put your card onto, here's one I put earlier again, when you put your card onto a reader, the reader is emitting radio waves. So there's a hemisphere of radio waves that are covering this area. When the card goes into it, the reader says, aha, there's a card arrived, because the card says, there's some power, I can start doing things. I can power myself up, it's got little capacitors in there which hold the charge, and the radio frequency signal powers the card. Then, when it comes to talk to the card, you've got the signal and you're powering the card. Damn, I've got to talk to the card, what am I going to do now? First generation, the type A, it says, okay, card, hold on to your hats. The card uses a capacitor to hold the charge, and then it uses that radio signal to send the message, then it returns to delivering power. What they've done with the later generation, the type B, is rather than cutting off the power totally, sending the signal, then restoring the power signal, is it modulates the signal onto the power, onto the carrier. So the carrier is delivering constant power. When you're giving some communication, it basically goes between 100% and 90%, and that little variation is the signal. So you can talk to a card without it losing power, which is absolutely great. But then cards still need to remember data persistently, so then that's where they have a non-volatile memory, so that whatever data they've been told to keep, they will keep. So again, standards, we want to have standards about these things so we can have different manufacturers making them, and ISO 14443 covers the specification for how the radio comms work with the cards, what distances the card's going to work over, what the frequencies are, what the standard for how the modulation works. And then the great thing about smart cards, there's still smart cards in there. So once you've got over the barrier of communicating with the thing, you talk to it just like a contact smart card. And there, so we get back to 7816,